Welcome to Complete BS, the official podcast of couch coaches everywhere. Not just football. It's every sport that ruins your parlay, wrecks your fantasy week, and still brings you back for more. Buzzer beaters, blown leads, and brackets and flames. Yeah, we're all over it. Unfiltered takes, armchair analysis, and enough bold opinions to fill a playbook. Hosted by Brien Schmauch, sports junkie, the Saban of stats, and your official voice of I could coach better than that. Let's go.
Welcome, Couch Coach Nation. We had an exciting week 3, and we're at the quarter pole of the season. It's hard to believe that 3 out of the 12 games are already done for most teams. We've got some teams that we thought would be playoff caliber teams, and they're nearly out of it. I'm looking at you, Clemson, Notre Dame, and Florida. Friday night doesn't give us a whole lot to be excited about. We've got Tulsa, Oklahoma State, and Vegas tells me this is a 13.5-point advantage for Oklahoma State, who's not very good. What's that say about Tulsa? No thanks. So what else do we have to look at? Iowa at Rutgers. That's my only other option for Friday night. We've got 2-1 Iowa. They're a 2.5-point road favorite over 3-0 Rutgers. I haven't watched Rutgers play this year, but I have seen Iowa, and watching their offense is like watching paint dry. Defensively, Iowa, they're good. They're going to be strong, but they can't score. So if I had to bet this blind, I'd probably go with the home underdog. I'd be more comfortable if I could tease it up to 3.5. AV, am I right to go blindly with Schiano and fade Iowa?
I mean, if you have to go blind, I'm going in Rutgers because I don't like the passing attack of Iowa. I don't like Gronowski's throwing the ball for 50 yards a game or something. Little exaggeration, but I think Rutgers has some running backs and some receivers that can make big plays, and you kind of need that against Iowa. They make it tough to sustain long drives. Between Rutgers being at home, being able to possibly hit on a couple of big plays, I would go Rutgers in this game.
Before we get into this weekend's games, we're going to step back in the time machine and go to our preseason Heisman picks that were all over the place, and everybody's gotten this wrong. My picks were Cade Klubnik, Garrett Nussmeier, Jeremiah Love, and Jeremiah Smith. Of course, there's time in the season for any of these guys still to have a monster year. Typically, the guy who's leading at that quarter pole doesn't end up winning the Heisman. I think out of this group, the guy that's the most likely to still be a finalist would be Jeremiah Smith. Klubnik, with his losses, I think he's out of it. Likely the case too with Jeremiah Love. Plus, Notre Dame doesn't really have a marquee game left on their schedule for him to have a Heisman moment. Nussmeier has been just very vanilla to me. They just are kind of blah from an offensive standpoint. So at the quarter pole, I've got my Heisman frontrunner right now, John Mateer, Oklahoma, 944 yards passing, 161 yards on the ground, and 12 total touchdowns. Marcel Reed, Texas A&M, 869 yards passing, 142 yards rushing, 10 total touchdowns. Dante Moore, Oregon, 657 yards passing, 78% completion percentage, and 7 total touchdowns. And Devin Dampier, Utah, 628 yards passing, 198 yards rushing, 8 total touchdowns, and no interceptions. AV, I think you had, if my memory serves me, Jeremiah Smith, Arch Manning, Garrett Nussmeier, DJ Lagway. How you feeling about those picks? And if you had to redo it now here at the quarter pole, what do you like?
I don't feel great about them, but they weren't crazy out of left field picks either. I think everybody thought those guys would have a good year. I think you nailed it. Those are the guys I had. Mateer. I think Dante Moore might be the front runner. He's completing like 80% of his passes, 78%, 657 yards, 7 touchdowns, 1 interception. So he's protecting the ball. He doesn't have the rushing stats of Mateer, but I think Oregon has a chance to have a really big year. And if he keeps up this performance, he'll be right up in there. So I like Dante Moore. John Mateer has the moment already where they beat Michigan and he looked really good in it. So he's probably on top of most people's ballots through 3 games. But if you're looking towards the future, I'd say Dante Moore. I wouldn't throw away Jeremiah Smith yet. I know he had a stinker against Texas, but the last 2 games he had 5 catches, 119 yards, 9 catches, 153 yards, and 3 touchdowns. If he does that the rest of the year, he'll be back in the top. So I wouldn't quite yet throw away Jeremiah Smith, even though after game 1 it seemed like that was the case. else. I will get rid of Delagway and Lenora Sellers. Those guys are out. Cape Klubnik, they're out.
Absolutely. And I totally agree. Smith is the guy that can get back into it. There's some other guys out there that are putting up huge numbers. It's going to depend on what their teams do. I look at USC quarterback Jaden Maivia and Texas Tech quarterback Baron Morton. If their teams are in the playoff hunt right now, both teams are 3-0. They got a lot of football to be played, but they're slinging the ball all over the field. They're putting up huge numbers already, both of them over 1,000 yards passing. They're well on their way for 4,000 plus yards passing. If they do that and they're on 10-win teams in the playoffs, I think you could see both of those guys potentially get into the conversation.
Yeah, there's no question. Texas Tech is lighting it up right now. That quarterback's throwing it everywhere.
If we look at the conferences and how they're stacking up, ACC and SEC have already had a little conference play. Big 10 and Big 12 are both starting conference play this weekend. Starting off with the ACC, who we think might be in the conference championship right now. I've got Georgia Tech is going to face the winner of the Florida State-Miami game.
Yeah, that makes sense. Georgia Tech misses both of those teams. They've already beat Clemson. They have the inside track. Clemson's got one conference loss. They play Florida State. They don't play Miami. So who else would even contend? Maybe Cal with their schedule?
Cal with their schedule. Louisville's undefeated, but they haven't played anyone. They've got the hardest schedule remaining. They've got at Pitt, at Miami, Cal, Clemson, at SMU for whatever that is. Georgia Tech is well on their way. And then who's going to play Georgia Tech? Florida State, Miami winner. Florida State still got at Clemson, at NC State. Miami's got a Friday night game against Louisville, and then not a whole lot else. The question with Miami always is late in the season, do they have a collapse?
Yeah, I think you're right in Georgia Tech and the winner of Florida State, Miami.
When we look at the Big Ten, I think it's kind of jumping off the page, at least to me. Ohio State, Oregon, a rematch of last year, but there's a lot of teams still in the mix. Penn State, Michigan, Nebraska, which play this weekend, Indiana, Illinois play this weekend, and then USC. All these teams, again, they haven't started Big Ten play. With Michigan, Nebraska, though, I think the winner of this game will be undefeated in conference play going into late November, where Nebraska's got a Penn State game and then Michigan at the end of the season with Ohio State. I think one of those two teams could end up being there, whereas Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State, they kind of round robin each other and they could knock each other off. So I think you'll get one team out of that Ohio State, Oregon, Penn State potentially versus maybe a Michigan, Nebraska winner.
Yeah, I agree. And then that turns into the whole, is it advantageous, right? Like if Oregon goes to the championship game and Ohio State sits out with one loss or however it works, and then they still make the playoffs, they're kind of in a better spot. But
sure.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. To be honest with you, I'm a little down on Michigan after that Oklahoma performance. Now, they did play better last week, and so maybe Oklahoma is that good, and the next few weeks will tell us that. But I think Michigan could lose a game between Nebraska and the end of the season, but I haven't studied their schedule enough to predict one. Nebraska seems a bit inconsistent, like they could look really good from week to week and then have a stinker and lose a game.
When I look at Illinois and Indiana and USC, they all have more than one big game on their schedule, whereas Michigan, Nebraska, they each play USC in October, I think, but then they don't have anybody till November, and they're really getting the bottom 2/3 of the Big Ten. So that's why I think that they've got a lot of runway, and they'll win games where they don't have their A game. When we look at the SEC, I've got Georgia and Oklahoma as the top two teams in the SEC. A lot of football to be played. Alabama, LSU, Ole Miss, Texas, maybe Vandy, and Texas A&M. They're all going to have something to say about it. I think the easiest path to the SEC championship game, though, is Texas A&M and what their schedule looks like. They don't have some of the same games that these other teams are going to have to face. And so they're going to be able to stack up a lot of wins and just continue to ride the way all the way to Atlanta. So look out for Texas A&M because of the schedule to possibly sneak in there if Georgia, Oklahoma, or some of these other teams falter.
Yeah, I think as of right now, Georgia's got the game against Tennessee. That really puts Tennessee behind the 8-ball. Oklahoma's got the biggest win. This weekend's game, and we'll get to it, the Oklahoma-Auburn is big for this. I think Auburn can be thrown in the mix as of right now. I don't think they'll be there, but we don't know. If they beat Oklahoma, they start to look good. They just take Oklahoma's place in the list of teams that could make it. So I agree with you. As of today, I'd pick Georgia, Oklahoma. I would not pick LSU. Their offense looks gross to me. So it'll be interesting to see it play out. I don't think some of these high-end SEC teams are what we thought they were at the beginning of the season.
I would agree with that.
Not to diminish the strength of the overall conference per se, but because like Oklahoma's better than I thought they would be. I think Auburn's better than I thought they would be. But Texas is beatable. Georgia looked beatable. Texas A&M had a great win against Notre Dame, but they gave up 40 points. It's hard to tell how good they are in week 3.
Yeah, we thought Florida and South Carolina would be in this conversation, and they're not. But here we are. We've got Vandy as a potential team out there in that mix. When we head out west to the Big 12, this is a conference that I've said in the offseason, I think there's maybe 6 teams that could potentially win this. Even though Iowa State currently is my highest ranked Big 12 team, if I had to put it right now today, I've got Utah, Texas Tech, who are actually playing this week as what I think the 2 best Big 12 teams are. And then Iowa State, BYU, and Arizona State's going to have something to say about this. Arizona State is really kind of the enigma for me. I think they've got a ton of talent, but I need to see it, and I haven't seen it yet. They played cupcakes or they played poorly on the road against Mississippi State. Can they get back into it once they get into conference play? I'm super excited to see the Utah-Texas Tech game Saturday at noon. I think that's going to be amazing. So Big 12 is going to be interesting all season long.
Yeah, I agree. I like Texas Tech so far, but I like offense. It's easy to watch their games and really think they look good because they're scoring more points than anybody in the country right now. But I think they're going to be tough to beat. Utah is good. They're going to be tough to beat. Iowa State's kind of sitting in the driver's seat right now, but I think it'll come out of those 3 teams. I don't think Arizona State's going to make any Big 12 noise.
And that kind of leads us into the playoffs, and I think it's way too early to start trying to say, all right, well, this team's in the playoff and this team's out of it. But I do think when we look at who the group of 5 representative is going to be, for me, it's coming out of the American, and it's one of 4 teams: Tulane, USF, Memphis, or Navy. 2 of those 4 teams are going to be playing in the American Conference Championship game. Are you with me on the American being the group of 5 representative?
I think they have more chances than any other group of 5, so probably. But I will say there is a team in UNLV that's currently undefeated, and we all know what Dan Mullen can do. So I think they could go undefeated throughout the season. Now, are there big enough wins on there to pass up a USF who's beat 2 ranked teams, or a Navy, who's going to have some good wins, or whoever? Boise State, they could come back. Yeah, if they figure the rest, even though they lost to USF, if USF has a couple of losses, they could sneak in. So I don't necessarily think it has to come from the American, but there's more chances from that conference. So probably, right?
If those 4 teams go 2-2 against each other and knock each other out, and everybody's got losses, which then knocks them down in the polls, and UNLV just keeps riding along and keeps winning, perhaps UNLV could sneak in there. More than likely, I think it's the American, and it's one of those 4 teams that we'll see. I think the Big 12 only gets 1 team in.
Agreed.
Right now, if I had to guess, the ACC gets 2, and so that's 4 spots gone, leaving 8 left. And conventional wisdom maybe says it goes 4-4 with the SEC and the Big 10. I think the way you possibly get a 5th team in, if you're the SEC, is if the ACC only gets 1 team, and that opens up a 9th spot, and then it goes 5-4. I don't know that it's going to go 5-3. I still think the committee really wants to go 4-4, and I would not be at all surprised if into those last couple of weeks they're really looking at where they're setting teams. They're not going to tell you that they're manipulating things, but I think at the end it's going to end up being 4-4. And
I'm predicting 5-3.
Okay. 5-3 with the SEC getting 5 in.
Yep. We'll see if it changes. I don't see anybody in the Big 10. If Illinois has a good year, they'll get in and it'll be 4-4. But if they're not the 4th team, I don't think there's a good enough team out there that will have a case to be in over a 2-loss Oklahoma or someone like that who's vying for the 5th team in the SEC.
I think a 2-loss SEC team is getting in. I think when we're looking at the 5th SEC team, we're definitely looking at a 3-loss team.
Sure. But like if Michigan has 2 losses and they're the 4th best team in the Big and they have no great wins, and you're sitting there looking at Texas A&M and let's say they beat Florida and whoever else, and they've got 3 losses though, but they've got a couple of big wins. The 3-loss SEC team with a couple of big wins will get in over the 4th big team who might have less losses but no big wins.
And that's why we love college football, because right now we're just throwing everything against the wall and seeing what's going to stick. But let's go ahead and jump into what I'm really excited about. Noon on Saturday, Texas Tech at Utah. Both teams have played cream puffs so far. This is their first true test in what's going to be a wild Big 12 season. Tech's Baron Morton's been solid so far against mostly air, 70% completion, 923 yards, 11 touchdowns to 1 pick. They've got a solid ground game with 3 guys that are chipping in, even though they like to pass so much. Defensively, they're going to need to set the edge with David Bailey, and they need to put pressure on the Utah quarterback. That Utah quarterback is Devin Dampier that I talked about earlier. He's one of the most fun and electric players in all of college football. He's thrown for over 600 yards while completing 73% of his passes and almost 200 yards on the ground. You've got Wayshawn Parker, his running back, also almost 200 yards rushing. That gives them balance. Utah's got a big physical offensive line. They need to lean on that offensive line in the running game to wear down the Tech defenders and slow down that pass rush. It also will keep that high-powered Tech offense on the sidelines. AV, what are you seeing with this game?
It's hard to tell because of the level of competition that they played. But like Texas Tech is averaging almost 60 points a game, like 58 points a game and 600 yards a game. But they won't do that against Utah. Utah's a physical team. They've got some defense. Now, the one thing I will say is Utah has a starting safety named Rabbit Evans who's out injured. And when your starting safety, who's a good player, is out, you could give up some over-the-top type stuff. They could pick on him with some different concepts. So I think Texas Tech will hit some big plays and score some points. I've got Utah holding on at the end, and it's something like a 30-28, 30-27 type game where they score close to 60 points.
So we don't talk about what our scores or who our predictions are going to be ahead of time. I think this game's all about making defensive adjustments because there's going to be a lot of offense. The ball's going to be moving a lot between the 20s, and which defense makes those adjustments or the defense that can force a turnover is going to decide this game. To me, it sounds like a perfect Kyle Whittingham coach team that's going to come out on top. Utah's a 3.5-point favorite at home. I think the hook is too much. I like Utah 31-28. You had mentioned 30-28, so we're right there in alignment on that. Auburn, Oklahoma at 3:30 on ABC. Both teams enter 3-0. Auburn's best wins versus Baylor. Michigan's got an 11-point win over a ranked Michigan team. Auburn's quarterback, Jackson Arnold, he's familiar playing at Oklahoma. He transferred from Oklahoma. Auburn's relied heavily on the run this year, averaging 242 yards rushing per game, whereas Oklahoma, they've been led by John Mateer, the Heisman frontrunner, in my opinion, 316 yards passing per game, but also he contributes on the ground with his running game. The game opened as an Oklahoma 6.5-point favorite, and I really think this should be closer to a double-digit spread. If you're getting Oklahoma for under 7, I think that's money in the bank. What about you?
Yeah, here's what I don't know. I don't know how good Oklahoma's defense is. I know they're good. I just don't know if they're dominant or just pretty good, right? Because they look dominant against Michigan. And I assumed Michigan's freshman quarterback didn't play well, hostile environment. Maybe he's not as good as they thought he was. Maybe Michigan's not as good as they think they are. And then Michigan goes out and looks great the next week. So maybe it's Oklahoma's defense is really good, right? And the reason that's important for this game is because Auburn has weapons, and Hugh Freeze typically can score points. So I'm not going to be surprised to see Auburn score some, but I think Oklahoma's defense is going to be good enough to keep them under what their average. And I think Mateer and that offense is going to score plenty. Even though Auburn's a good team this year, better than I expected, I think they're going to have a surprisingly decent season. I'm going to go with Oklahoma 34-24. 10-point win at home, maybe kick a field goal late to ice it. I think it'll be a fairly enjoyable, kind of tight game through the first half, and maybe halfway through the third quarter, Oklahoma takes control, pulls away, and wins by 10 late.
So I really like the plan Oklahoma had for Michigan, and I see them doing a lot of the same with Auburn. They got a lot of pressure on Bryce Underwood, and they were able to slow him down and get him rattled. Now, freshman quarterback versus Jackson Arnold, who's played a lot of ball. I get that. They gave up one long run to Michigan's Justice Haynes, but otherwise they bottled him up. They've got the blueprint to do it again with the same type of weapons that Michigan had. I've got Oklahoma. I thought it should be a double-digit spread, 31-20. 11-point win for Oklahoma at home. Illinois at Indiana, 7:30 at night on NBC, the big game in the Big Ten. Indiana made the playoffs last year, and I've said all preseason that Illinois is this year's Indiana with playoff aspirations. This is the first time that these two teams have played each other when they've both been ranked since 1950. Indiana's been running the ball well this year with 3 backs all over 200 yards, but they've got one guy who's out for the season. The other 2 guys are going to have to carry the load. The quarterbacks in this game are like mirrors of each other. Illinois' Luke Altmaier has thrown for 1 more yard than Indiana's Fernando Mendoza. Mendoza's got 1 more touchdown. They're both yet to throw an interception. They're both completing around 72% of their passes. Very similar in the production that they've had so far. One of the best matchups of the day is going to be Indiana's corner D'Angelo Pons versus Illinois' wide receiver Hank Beatty. Pons is one of the top quarterbacks in the country and a likely first-round NFL draft choice. Beatty's got 19 receptions for 289 yards through 3 games. AV, what do you like?
This is a tough one for me. I've become a bit of an Indiana fan. I guess more of a Kurt Signetti fan. Like, when you watch Indiana play, it's generally exciting. They have a fun style of offense. Mendoza is, I think, a really good fit for them this year. Mendoza has thrown for 708 yards and 9 touchdowns this year, and all 9 touchdowns have come in the last 2 games. Now, they played nobody, but that offense is feeling it. They've rushed for 300 yards a game, again, against nobody. Indiana at home, I'm a Signetti fan. The rushing game's going. I like the quarterback fit there with Mendoza. I'm going to pick Indiana to win. We'll call it 34-27.
All right. Well, I cannot believe Indiana's a 5.5-point favorite. This is almost like a pick 'em, I think. And to see that 5.5-point line shocked me. Illinois is averaging 45 yards a game on offense while only giving up 7.3 points a game on defense. I think the Illinois defense is the difference in this game. Gabe Akis getting pressure on Mendoza. I like the Illinois defense more so than Indiana's. Both teams are going to score. I also had 34-27, but Illinois winning this game.
The flip-flop. I got you.
Well, what do you got in the book club? Let's make some money.
Yeah, let's make some money. That would be nice. All right, so I got 3 this week. I'm going to go Texas Tech, Utah over 58.5. I said Rabbit Evans is out. I think Texas Tech hits some big plays, some quick scoring. I think Utah scores plenty. I think they run the ball and score. 58.5, that means roughly 30 points per team. I think one team's going to score high enough in the 30s that the other team that comes in the 20s, it'll be fine. I'm going to go over 58.5 for Utah, Texas Tech. Plenty of offense there. I'm going to take Oklahoma -7 against Auburn. We just went over that, but I think Oklahoma's defense is really good. Their offense has looked great. Auburn is a surprisingly good team to me, but they're on the road against a chainsaw right now. I think they just run into a team that's performing a little better right now, and they take one on the chin and lose by 10. And then I'm going to go the under for Maryland and Wisconsin. Maryland has a freshman quarterback starting. Wisconsin likes to pound the ball a little bit. I think it's just going to be a slow, kind of cloggy game, and I don't trust Maryland's passing attack to hit any big plays with the new quarterback. So I'm going to take the under 44.5, Maryland, Wisconsin.
I think those are all 3 solid plays. I really like the Texas Tech Utah over. It's something that I looked at also in trying to figure out my picks for my bonus pick. But ultimately, I decided to give everybody a late night opportunity to get some money in case you're down on Saturday, 11 p.m. Eastern kick. And that's important because Michigan State is going east to west to play Southern Cal in Los Angeles. I know they're young college kids, but body clock and time, it does matter. They're going to be playing at 11 o'clock at night. This game's not going to be over till 2 a.m. for the East Coast Michigan State players. USC opened a 17.5-point favorite. It's now at 18.5. USC is going to score a lot of points. I don't see Michigan State holding them under 40 points. So I do some quick math on that. They get 40. That means I can still give up 21 points and get a cover. Michigan State's 0-3 against the spread so far. Whether they score 21 or not, I know USC is going over 40. Bonus pick, USC to cover 18.5.
A late night snack. I like it.
Absolutely. Well, next Friday, we'll be back. We've got former Penn State All-American and Miami Dolphin great O.J. McDuffie. We're going to be talking Oregon, Penn State. We've got some huge games next weekend. You can follow Complete BS Pod on X or Instagram, and make sure you like, share, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts.
Thanks for listening to Complete BS. Be sure to subscribe, share, and follow us online. And tell us what you think of this episode. Use hashtag CouchCoachNation, and let's keep the conversation going.